All right, welcome to the Wolverine.com Tailgate Show, the first edition. Clayton Sayfie with Chris Balas, who's with us live from Minnesota. Austin Fox, I assume from Westphalia, Michigan, the beautiful Westphalia, Michigan. But Chris, we'll start with you. Obviously, being at the game, you'll be in the press box in just about an hour or so, or whatever it is. Cold out there. You were saying before the show, not too much wind. What's the weather report there?
Yeah, first off, hello to my peeps in Westphalia. Waiting for Austin to get clunked in the back of the head when this door opens, when his mom comes in to bring his laundry in. Can't wait to see that. So, hey, it is cold, man. There are some snow piles here, but not supposed to start snowing, I guess, until probably fourth quarter at the earliest. They said just a dusting. But you know what the big thing is, guys? There's no wind, so it's not bitter cold. It's not going to be one of those things where guys are going to be huddled up. I remember Rich Rod's guys. John Borton pointed out to me one year when you had Martavius Odoms and all these guys, it was 60 degrees at Michigan Stadium and they were huddled around a space heater. And I said, these guys might be in trouble, man. But I don't expect that of a Joe Milton, your California boy, Zach Charbonnet. So I don't think the weather will be a factor. But you know what? It's so weird, guys. I mean, there's just no buzz because nobody's going to the game. You know, we got a hotel for $53. Normally, you can't get anything on the road in the Big Ten. But I'm looking forward to this one, man. There's been some interesting developments in the Big Ten already. Anxious to see what Michigan has and if they're a little more crisp than some of the other teams out there.
Yeah, one of those interesting developments is Michigan State falling to Rutgers today. You hate to see that, don't you, Austin?
Absolutely. That breaks my heart. They looked flat out terrible today on both sides of the ball, and Rutgers surely dominated that game. So I know Chris said at one point that MSU might legitimately be the worst team in the Big Ten. So it'll be interesting to see how this one plays out next Saturday when they play
Michigan State. You know, so that could be the big matchup on that extra weekend of the year, guys, that we're all pointing to. You know, Brandon Peters versus Michigan State show.
Well, I was going to say I would take Brandon Peters over Rocky Lombardi any day.
I think I would take Peters. Somebody. I'm not going to. Yeah, I was going to say something I probably shouldn't have. So, but anyway, it's it wasn't good, man. And the thing is, they looked poorly coached. And there were some decisions there. We can talk about that a little later. We shouldn't really be talking about Michigan State right now, but I will say that some of the decisions, man, when you're not kicking a field goal down 28-20 from 37 yards in the third quarter and things like that, you're thinking, what the heck is this guy doing? So pretty interesting.
Any other takeaways from the Big Ten that we've seen so far? Ohio State rolled Nebraska after it was kind of a dogfight early.
It was a nice opening drive, right?
Yeah.
I think I got a text from Austin. Ooh, the Huskers, you know. And I'm like, all right, let's
That
wait.
was me.
Let's wait 3 minutes, right? So,
Yeah.
That text never happened, guys.
That was me. It was 7-0 Nebraska and 7-0 Rutgers.
yeah.
And it was a fun 15 minutes, but
Let's be honest, though, guys. You know, there's going to be a time early in this Michigan game where the message board's melting down, and you know, Michigan will run on the first play for 3 yards, and everybody will be like, "Here we go again," and Michigan stinks, and blah 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 blah. You got to let it play out. These guys have not played football in a long time. You know, the one thing about Michigan that I will say that's been good is that they've been going at it, and they have not stopped. I think Michigan State stopped for a while because of COVID. Some of these other programs stopped for a while, maybe even Minnesota. I give Michigan credit. You know, they did everything right, protecting themselves from COVID and everything else. I think they're going to be a little bit sharper, but it all comes down, guys, to Joe Milton and how he performs tonight.
mm-hmm. We addressed it in a roundtable early in the week or yesterday, but what are the expectations? What do you think Michigan's going to do? I think somebody asked a question, Indy Wolverine 23, wondered what's the prediction of percentage of run versus pass? I think that's an interesting one because you're going to want to establish a ground game, and I know there's going to be, like you said, the meltdown on the message board if maybe they do run on like a 3rd and 2 or something, but at the same time, this is the kid's first start. So you're going to have to balance some things out. So what do you guys expect, I guess, from that?
Austin, you go first. You talk.
I think that Michigan is going to lean slightly more on the run simply because they have the luxury to. They have an outstanding stable of backs, 4 guys who I think will contribute tonight. And on top of that, it's obviously Joe Milton's first start. So I think you do want to ease him in a little bit, not air it out 30 to 35 times or anything like that. So I think it'll be fairly balanced. But when it's all said and done, I think we're going to see this team rely on the run slightly more tonight.
Yeah, I was talking with my colleague and our colleague Angelique Shingelis. We're going to head over to the stadium here shortly, and she said this will probably be a run-heavy game for Michigan if they can, and they better be able to, guys. You know, you got all that beef at guard. I think that's the most beef. Well, I can't say that because Mike Nwenu was probably pushing 400 pounds at one point, but these guys can move, and that was one thing I asked Ed Warner, Michigan's offensive line coach, in the week. All we heard about was how much more athletic this line can be and what can you do with that athleticism. But then you got a 345-pounder at one guard and a 339-pounder at the other. So, but I think those guys are going to be able to move some people, and I think you're going to see a lot of that. I think they should test the edges with these guys, right? The speed and space. Remember what they did to Michigan State last year with Donovan Peoples-Jones getting that ball in the flats, the receivers, let him make one guy miss. Things like that, safe passes. Don't just sit there and come out like you don't have a plan, like Michigan State looked like they did today, frankly. You have to have a plan, and hopefully they can run the ball. They got that stable of backs. I think Zach should be a pleasant surprise, guys. And a lot of people forget this kid ran for over 700 yards as a true freshman, and he wasn't 100%. So I'm looking forward to seeing that and some run-heavy stuff today.
Yeah, the options at running back are almost limitless, especially now with Blake Corum coming on. The next question from S. Dave, he's wondering anyone out or dinged up. And I think that's something that we haven't, in the weirdest year ever, when you have COVID and you have all this stuff where maybe limited practices at times where guys could get more banged up. You're seeing it in the NFL with no mini camp and OTAs and stuff and a ton of injuries. Like, Michigan's a really healthy team going into this game.
Knock on wood, right? And on a cold night like this, maybe there's a hammy or something like that. You're going to see some of that, and kids get banged up, I'm afraid. But who knows? Right now, they seem to be pretty healthy. But we've been surprised before, guys, where not a peep out of the submarine, and then all of a sudden we get to a game, and it's like, where's so-and-so? And that's why we're here, and that's why we're going to get there early and let people know who's out there working up. You know what? One thing they're doing now, though, guys, and that they started last year, was wearing those warm-ups without numbers so that you can't tell anything. Not only do we not get a travel roster now, they don't allow us to do our own work and see who's here and who's not. It's really hard to pick those guys out from the press box by their faces and see who's here and who's not. But it sounds to me like they're healthy going in. It's going to be interesting to see who gets the first reps at running back, who the first receivers are. I don't know if you read my column today, hearing that Roman Wilson might be running with the ones. And there were two guys that our sources singled out this week. They said Blake Corum is going to be a star at Michigan. If you read our Inside the Fort, not just a contributor, but eventually a star at Michigan, got great feet. And then Roman Wilson is just an absolute bullet. I think it was, I don't remember who it was, Jay Harbaugh or somebody, who said if this kid played not in Hawaii but in the mainland, that he might have been a 5-star recruit. Maybe it plays out that way.
Yeah. And that kind of plays into this next question from Mayhew 1421. Basically the same question from Blue Monster, one of my favorites on the fort. What difference will we notice about Michigan in year 2 under Josh Gaddis? I think the number one thing for me is the receivers are a lot smaller, a lot quicker, are maybe going to be able to, get some of those underneath routes going, some of the things that have given Michigan problems on defense in the years past. So I guess, what are you guys expecting? Austin, you go first on this offense and what the differences are going to be. No Nico Collins, no Donovan Peoples-Jones, and no Tariq Black. So it's Giles Jackson, Roman Wilson, Mike Sainristil, those types of guys, and Ronnie Bell, of course.
Yeah, the biggest thing I expect to see is that I think they're going to be further along early in the year than they were last year when they were first learning that system, because during that first month and a half of the season last year, there were a lot of growing pains with that offense. They only put up 24 in double overtime on a bad Army team, and they couldn't move the ball in Wisconsin in September, and they only put up 10 points on Iowa in early October last year. And then things finally clicked, and the offense got a lot better, and they were really moving the ball well late in the year. So I expect that to carry over at least somewhat early this year, and I don't think we're going to see quite the same amount of growing pains that we saw with this team early last season offensively.
Well, it's interesting that you got a bunch of new guys on the offensive line too, and that was the one thing that those guys had last year was the chemistry. And so who knows what to expect. I will say Stuber's played a lot of ball, so has Mayfield. I think it was Austin who said he was most excited to see Vastardis, or was that you, Clay?
That was me.
It's Clay, and I couldn't agree with you more, man, because here's a kid that we never thought would play a meaningful snap at Michigan. I said the same thing about Wilton Spate one time, and the kid ended up having a couple decent years here. But Vastardis is the key, and Joe Milton obviously too. Got to have those snaps. How's he going to respond in his first real taste of action when people are depending on him? And I know he played sparingly at times last year when Cesar Ruiz was out for a couple series, but this is a whole different animal, man. And so we'll see. And then Chuck Filiaga, here's a guy that I also singled out in the 3-2-1 column today as a guy who has been waiting his turn, and now he's a redshirt junior, huge kid, good kid, but does he have that mean streak, and can he move people? Is he going to move people? That's what I want to see. So if those guys gel, it's going to be they can move some people, and hopefully they move the ball on the ground. I think it should be a pretty decent day for the Michigan backs.
Yeah, and on Vastardis, you mentioned Angelique Shangelis, our colleague, asked Ed Warner, did he kind of come out of nowhere? People didn't really expect it, and he was like, his answer was, in a word, not really, because he'd always been there, and it was always that consistent guy. And now it's like, well, I'm a fifth-year senior. Caesar leaves early. He's a great leader, it turns out. So they got a lot of confidence in him. But he is the number one guy I'm excited to watch out of the under-the-radar guys, because we know how important that center spot is. We know how important, remember 2 years ago when they were breaking in a new offensive line at Notre Dame and they weren't up to speed. So if Vastardis has these guys gelling together, and it's on the other guys too, like Jalen Mayfield and Stuber and those guys, but it's going to be a huge storyline. The next thing I wanted to hit on was the fact that Minnesota might be without two starting offensive linemen, Daniel Falele, Curtis Dunlap Jr., both on the right side of their O-line. So shifting over to Michigan's defense, I think Aiden Hutchinson and Kwity Paye are going to have a field day with that. Whoever's lined up on that side, Chris, I think you mentioned it in our roundtable. If they try to chip Aiden Hutchinson with a tight end or something, he's just going to eat those guys up. So your expectations for the edge of Michigan's defense?
I'd be really disappointed if they didn't dominate. And, even with Falele, I was thinking, man, that guy, how good can your feet be at 400 pounds, right? And I'm thinking what Doug Skeen said, our contributor who used to play at Michigan, he said it takes a long time just to go around a 400-pounder, right? So, but you've got quickness on the edges, and I know that these guys are chomping at the bit. I know that Aiden Hutchinson is ready to play. I know that Kwity Paye, I give him credit for coming back. No disrespect to the Nico Collinses and Ambry Thomas, of course, but to me, that's an important sign of leadership, and I love those bookends. And I think that's one of the keys here. But you can't let Minnesota run the ball. And I think Carlo Kemp comes back a year stronger. Chris Hinton's a key here, guys, because he needs to be a guy that can't be moved off the ball. We saw what happened against Ohio State last year, Wisconsin. They were talking about fits, of course, and that was part of it. But a lot of the times they were just getting blown off the ball, and that can't happen. So, but that's what I expect from those guys. And I think can't let Tanner Morgan get comfortable. I wouldn't be surprised if you see Daxton Hill on Rashad Bateman, or if they give him a little bit of extra attention. Everybody talks about the tight ends. I think they only caught, 11 balls last year, Minnesota tight ends or something like that. Did I read that?
It was low. Yeah.
It was low.
I don't know the exact number.
10 receptions on the year for 4 guys.
There you go. So, take that out of the game, and it'll be interesting to see the game plans. And but God, guys, I'm so happy to have Big Ten football to watch. I don't know if you can tell, I'm kind of sneaking peeks over here at the Penn State Indiana game. Indiana just kicked a field goal, but it's just so much fun to have Big Ten football back. And God bless Rutgers.
Seriously. We didn't think we were going to have a season 2 months ago, and here you are sitting in a hotel room in Minnesota, ready to head over to the game. $53 a night, so
yeah,
a good deal there. Austin, what are your expectations on the defense? I know you were the one that talked to a Minnesota guy who basically was kind of the guy that confirmed that, hey, these guys are probably not going to play. That was the rumblings for a couple of weeks. Vince Gray possibly going up against Dax Hill. Could that be a smokescreen? Against Bateman, could that be a smokescreen and we end up seeing a ton of Dax Hill over him, like you mentioned, Chris?
Yeah, I think it's going to be kind of a group effort to slow down Rashad Bateman. It'll take all 4 guys in Michigan secondary to do so, because he is one of the best receivers in the entire country. But back to Aiden Hutchinson and Kwity Paye, we spoke with Sean Williams of the Gopher Report, and he said that he does not expect Falele or Dunlap to play. And he actually said he expects a freshman to start at right tackle in place of Falele. So imagine a freshman in his first collegiate game trying to block Kwity Paye and Aiden Hutchinson off the edge. I do expect Michigan's defense to play very well tonight and really shut down that Minnesota running game, because Chris said it earlier, you can't let them get in a rhythm on the ground with Mohamed Ibrahim and the other running backs from Minnesota. So assuming the front 7 does its job, which I fully expect them to do, it's going to come down to slowing down Rashad Bateman and the rest of these Minnesota receivers tonight.
And make them earn it, guys. Don't let them, the ones over the top. That's the only reason they lost the Penn State game last year.
Yep.
They had one terrible matchup. The other one was Josh Metellus not getting a signal instead of calling timeout. He went and had with the play. and that's your ball game, right? So you can't have that. Even if you give up a 20, 30-yard play, you can't let the guy behind you go all the way. You've got to stiffen and hold these guys to field goals, something that Michigan hasn't done well enough. So, but, the more I think about it, the more I really like Michigan's defense. This is a fast defense, and I think they're going to get some pressure on the quarterback, hopefully as much as Rutgers did on Michigan State today.
Mm-hmm. And with two young offensive linemen possibly stepping in, we could see some big hits on Tanner Morgan from guys that we haven't talked about yet, like Michael Barrett or Cam McGrone, who loves to rush the passer too. I'm excited to watch that. Let's go back to Joe Milton. We got another question from Blue Monster. This is a good one. What does Joe Milton do well that's suited for Gaddis' offense specifically? To me, it's the deep ball. I think they're going to throw the deep ball a lot more with Joe Milton at quarterback, and that opens things up again on some of those underneath routes.
Austin?
Yeah, you do. I think they're going to take advantage of his arm. He's been clocked at throwing the ball 80 yards in the air before. So I think that's something that you have to at least try here and there, take shots down the field to take advantage of that throw. It all just comes down to him being smart with the ball, though, and obviously we didn't see that early last year when Shea Patterson was turning it over at a high rate. So I think that's something they're really going to be stressing to Milton, obviously, and his scrambling ability. I know he looks at himself as a pocket passer first and foremost, but if the play does break down and he has the ability to scramble a little bit, I think that could come into play tonight as well, and it could be huge if he can pick up a few first downs with his legs.
Yeah, I'd like to see him not put his shoulder down, but this kid is a kid that's tough to tackle. But from everybody we've talked to, man, you get an arm around him. It kind of reminds me of those old Iowa statues before you guys were even born. You'd get there and your defensive lineman would bounce off him, and it looked like a guy literally trying to drag a statue down, grabbing him around the legs and putting his leg around it, trying to drag him down. But Joe Milton is so strong, 6'5", 240 pounds, that I think this guy has that luxury that, man, it's tough to get him down. So I'm anxious to see that. I want to see some read option with him because I think that he can do that. He's a strider. He's never been. That's the misconception that this guy is always been a true dual threat. No, he's always been a pocket passer. And Desmond Howard said that today on game day. He said this is not your typical, guy that's a run first, pass second guy. But let's get him some. If I'm the Michigan offensive coordinator, let's get him some looks early that get him in a rhythm. Get the short passes, the bubble screens, and things like that. Make sure the touch is there because this kid's going to have a lot of adrenaline, man, and he could probably impale somebody, from 10 yards away if he unleashes it. So hopefully we'll see him in a rhythm early. If not, this could be a struggle for the Michigan offense. Let's be honest, guys. I've listed so many guys that in their first starts at Michigan on the road have struggled at quarterback, and the list includes some elite players. Guys like Tom Brady, who was okay at Notre Dame but didn't lead a win, and even some guys at home. In their first taste of action, Jim Harbaugh struggled out of the gate as a redshirt sophomore at Michigan. So let's cut him some slack. And if things go poorly, I don't want to have a post-game Skype where Austin is like banging his head against that door or something like that because he's so pissed off.
Never say never.
Yeah.
I mean, you hope not. And then that means the message board will be melting down.
Exactly.
To GR Wolverine 21's wondering about how we think Michigan's going to take care of the ball, unlike the start of last season. That's another big question. It goes right hand in hand with the Milton talk. Is how is he going to look? Is he going to have a smooth debut? You mentioned Tom Brady not having one. John Borton wrote a column on that this week that he could one up Tom Brady for his debut as the starter. So taking care of the football is job number one for a quarterback. It's the most important job. If you're Joe Milton, I know you have the big arm, but you got to keep it simple, stupid at a certain, to a certain extent.
Well, he doesn't have the tiny hands, which helps. Shea Patterson is putting the ball on the ground all the time. Joe Milton's got those big hands, and so that helps. Isn't GR Wolverine 21, by the way, one of your relatives, Clay?
A friend, yeah.
Friend, relative. Man, that's like 5 in a row that I'm recognizing. I'm like, hey, that guy's a Sayfie. Now we just need the Foxes to chime in. What's your mom doing, Austin? So
she's doing the laundry, like you said. It's
okay.
sure.
Get a couple of questions in.
Yeah, but no, but that's one thing is that you're not going to put the ball on the ground. And one thing about Patterson, he didn't have the huge arm. Milton flicks that thing like you wouldn't believe. It's a tough ball to catch. I remember going back to camps many years ago when Ryan Mallett was tearing kids' gloves. I think it was Quentin Patilla. You probably don't remember him either. Came over to me and he said, "Yeah, look at what Tex did to my gloves, and they were shredded." That's what we're hearing about Joe Milton and his big arms. So the ball's going to get there quicker. It's up to guys to get open. We've heard positive rumblings about the receivers getting open and things like that, making tough contested catches. So, but he's got to put it in the right area, and if it's not there, don't force it.
Austin, I mean, turnover battle. We talked about this on the podcast this week, that it's the number one stat. Sounds like coach speak, but it's the number one stat that correlates to a win.
Yeah, Mel Tucker and MSU learned that the hard way today with 7 turnovers. So
Yes.
I think that Joe Milton probably does have a pick or two in him tonight, and that's not necessarily a knock on the kid. He's making his first career start. Like Chris said, we've seen it before with really good Michigan quarterbacks. Jake Rudock comes to mind pretty quick in 2015 at Utah. He threw 3 picks that night. So Wilton Spate in 2016 against Hawaii, I think, threw a pick on his first pass of the game. So we've seen it before. As long as he minimizes the turnovers, 1 pick, I think that you can live with that if you're the Michigan offense, but he can't be fumbling and putting the ball on the ground like Shea Patterson did at the start of last year.
Final thoughts, guys, on this game? I mean, Chris, you're about to head over to the press box. You'll be in attendance for us. Obviously, we'll have all the coverage at thewolverine.com. But I know Chris and I have a Michigan victory. Austin, I don't want to shame you or anything, but you picked Minnesota to win, which was, could come to fruition. Final thoughts? I mean, this is going to be a big one here tonight.
First off, Clay, you've come a long way since the Hope College days when you interviewed me about 2 or 3 years ago. Man, you're doing a hell of a job. And I appreciate you being at thewolverine.com. Same with you, Austin. You guys have been doing a great job. But my other thoughts are we're going to know early, guys, if Joe Milton, maybe it takes him some time to get in a rhythm, but say he comes out firing, man, this offense could be pretty good, I think, with that big armed quarterback. But I think let's not get the high expectations so high that if he doesn't have a great game that, oh my God, Joe Milton's going to be awful for the rest of his career. There's a long and storied history here of Michigan quarterbacks that have struggled early and gotten better and better and better and better. So got to be able to run the ball and take advantage of. I know that Minnesota has a lot of the front 7 returning at the same time. They've got some guys in there that haven't played before. Sounds like they might have a cornerback out too, is the word here from Minneapolis. There are going to be some plays to be made, but I really, to me, it's the defense, guys. I really think the defense is going to give those guys fits. I'm not sure that I think Clay said they're going to give up 27 points. If they give up 27 points, I'd be surprised. And that would mean that they're getting beaten over the top a couple of times. That needs to not happen.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be surprised either way if this one doesn't come down to the final possession or two. This just has the makings of a nail biter, in my opinion, and I think it could go either way. I did pick Minnesota to win, like you guys said, and unfortunately, I think the defense will give up a deep ball or 2 over the top, and that's why I have them scoring 31. But Joe Milton will be the main thing that I'll be keeping an eye on. It'll be crucial for him to take care of the ball. And like Chris said, it's important not to overreact to this game. Even if Michigan does lose a tight one, let's not forget, Minnesota was an 11-win team last year and a really good team, especially at the end of the year. So Michigan could still go on to have a heck of a year, even if they do drop this one in a tight one and really win the rest of their games up until that Ohio State game.
Yep, I agree with you guys. My final thought is we talk about Rashad Bateman, Tanner Morgan at quarterback. Doesn't matter who's on Rashad Bateman if they get to the quarterback and they don't let him get clean throws off, get the ball downfield to Rashad Bateman. So I'm looking at you, Aiden Hutchinson, Kwity Paye. I know they're probably watching. Cam McGrone, Michael Barrett, those types of guys that are going to be rushing the passer. Josh Ross, and then the inside with Chris Hinton and Carlo Kemp. So get after the quarterback if you're Michigan, and you don't have to worry too much about the outside and what those young corners are going to be. Who's going to start at that second corner spot, Chris? Jamon Green?
Jamon Green's going to be the guy, as Don Brown said, 22 is, I would imagine, with the Green twins, which one, Don? 22, so, we'll see how long he stays there, though. They're going to rotate these guys. If Jamon Green does a great job, keep him out there, man. But if he's struggling, you got other options there.
There we have it. Thank you, everybody, for watching at thewolverine.com. We got Chris in Minneapolis. Stay warm. Stay safe out there. Austin from Westphalia will have all the coverage. Use that promo code UM12 for 1 to get your first year subscription for just $12. Basically free, but $12 just in case, I'm breaking any laws by saying free. $12 at thewolverine.com. We'll see you guys for the game thread.
And we'll talk to you guys later.